I couldn't tell you exactly when it started, when my wife, Rachel, stopped being the woman I married. Maybe it happened so gradually that I didn't notice, just a series of small moments I brushed off because I didn't want to admit things were shifting. Or maybe it had always been there, lurking beneath the surface, just waiting for the right moment to rise up and make itself known. Either way, the night she brought up the party, I knew. It was a Thursday evening. The house was filled with the familiar, rich scent of pasta sauce simmering on the stove, something I had taken my time making. But Rachel barely touched her plate. Instead, her attention stayed locked on her phone, a faint smile playing on her lips as she scrolled. I watched her for a moment, then broke the silence. "What's so interesting?" She glanced up, almost like she'd forgotten I was even sitting there. "Oh, just a text from Jessica. She's throwing a party this weekend." That didn't surprise me. Rachel's college friends never needed much of a reason to celebrate. Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but something about the way she avoided my gaze told me there was more to it. "Who's gonna be there?" I asked, casually twirling my fork through my food. She hesitated just for a fraction of a second. "The usual group." I set my fork down. "Including him?" Her jaw tightened. That was all the answer I needed. "He's part of the group, so yes, he'll be there," she said, her tone too measured, like she had already practiced how she was going to say it. Brandon, her ex, the guy she had bounced back and forth with for years before she and I got together. He was a subject we didn't bring up, not because I was insecure, but because I knew exactly how he operated. He was the type of man who thrived on knowing he could still get under her skin. And if I was being honest, I wasn't entirely sure Rachel was immune to it. "You haven't mentioned him in a while," I said, keeping my voice steady. She let out a sigh and pushed her plate away. "Because I knew you'd make it weird." "I'm not making it weird," I said, carefully keeping my frustration in check. "I'm just asking why you suddenly want to go to a party at his house." Her arms crossed over her chest. "Because I'm allowed to have friends, Daniel." "That's not what I'm saying." "Well, it sure feels like it." Her words came sharp, defensive. But that wasn't what got to me. What really cut deep was the look in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It wasn't frustration. It was indifference, like she had already checked out. Not just of this conversation, but maybe of our marriage. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a party. This was her pushing limits, testing how much I'd let slide. I took a slow breath. "So, you're going no matter what I say?" She lifted her chin. Yes, that was it. No explanation. No attempt to ease my mind. Just a simple, unapologetic yes. Something shifted inside me right then. Something I wasn't quite ready to name. But I nodded. "Okay." She blinked, like she had expected a fight. Like she had braced herself for an argument that never came. "Okay." I forced a small smile. "Have fun." For the first time all night, she looked uneasy. And she should have been. Because when she walked into that party, she had no idea what was waiting for her. She left without hesitation, not once looking back. I stood by the kitchen window, watching her heels click against the pavement, her silhouette shrinking into the night. She wasn't just leaving the house. She was walking away from everything we had built together. She didn't hesitate. She didn't rush. It was as if she had already made this decision long before tonight. I watched as her car disappeared down the street, and suddenly, the house felt emptier than it ever had before. Leaning against the counter, I pressed my hands against the cool surface, needing something, anything, solid to hold on to. But the truth was, I had already lost my grip on everything that mattered. Because this wasn't just about tonight. This was the moment I really knew, that she wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. I ran a hand down my face, my mind racing, piecing together all the warning signs I had been too stubborn to see. The distance, the way she laughed just a little too much at her texts, the extra effort she put into her appearance when she was going somewhere without me. She thought I was blind. I wasn't. I had just been waiting for her to prove me wrong, waiting for her to remember who we used to be. But she didn't. She packed her bag, fixed her hair, and walked out that door, fully aware of exactly where she was going. To him, The thought landed in my chest like a gut punch, but I refused to let it break me. I pushed away from the counter and walked into the living room. The dim glow from the lamp cast long shadows across the walls, stretching over furniture that suddenly felt foreign. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. Our wedding photo sat on the bookshelf. Me in my suit, her in white, both of us grinning like we had the whole world ahead of us. I picked it up, my thumb grazing the glass. 6 years. 6 years of shared mornings, late-night talks, road trips, inside jokes. 6 years of believing in something that had been falling apart right in front of me. I set the frame back down, but this time face down. I didn't want to look at it anymore. Instead, I grabbed my phone and made a choice. Rachel wasn't the only one who could change the rules. If she thought I was going to sit at home like some clueless fool, she was dead wrong. Tonight, I was going to make sure she never forgot exactly what she had walked away from. The drive wasn't long, maybe 10 minutes, tops. I didn't even have to think about my destination. My hands steered the wheel on instinct, muscle memory guiding me there before my mind fully caught up. As I pulled into the parking lot, the neon glow of the bar sign flickered against the dark sky, just like it always had. I'd been here before, a long time ago, before marriage, before responsibilities, before I got wrapped up in a woman who no longer saw me the way she used to. Stepping inside, I was met with the familiar hum of music and voices blending together. The place was packed. No surprise, it was a Friday night. People were laughing, clinking glasses, lost in the moment. And that's exactly what I needed to do. I slid onto a bar stool, locking eyes with the bartender as she wiped down the counter. Morgan smirked. Well, she drawled. Look who finally decided to crawl out of the suburbs. I let out a low chuckle. Something like that. She raised an eyebrow. And yet, here you are. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I grabbed the drink she placed in front of me, took a slow sip, and let the warmth settle in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't sitting at home wondering if Rachel was thinking about me while she stood in her ex's living room, sipping a drink and laughing at old jokes. No, I was done with that. But just as I settled into the thought, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, half expecting a text from a buddy. But when I saw the name on the screen, a smirk pulled at my lips. Rachel. Not a call. A text. Where are you? Leaning back, I rolled the glass between my fingers. She had walked out hours ago without so much as a second glance. And now she wanted to know where I was? Interesting. I didn't reply. Not yet. Something told me this night was far from over. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. Where are you? It wasn't just a question. It was a crack in her confidence. Rachel had left that house acting like she had the upper hand, like I was just going to sit there and wait for her. But now she was the one looking for me. I could picture it. Her standing in the middle of that party, scanning the crowd, expecting me to be at home, predictable as ever. Not tonight. Sliding my phone back into my pocket, I lifted my drink to my lips and took another sip. No rush. If she wanted to know where I was, she could wait. Morgan leaned on the counter, giving me a knowing look. That face tells me you just got a very interesting text. I chuckled, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Something like that. She tilted her head. Ex checking in on you? I raised an eyebrow. Not yet, but she might be soon. Morgan let out a low whistle. Oh, this is getting good. I didn't respond, just smirked and took another sip. The truth was, I wasn't ignoring Rachel's text just to mess with her. I was enjoying the silence. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one in control. The second text came 20 minutes later. Are you home? I exhaled a quiet laugh. Home? No, I wasn't home. But it was cute that she thought I would be. I imagined her standing by her ex's kitchen counter, drink in one hand, phone in the other. Was she feeling guilty? Second-guessing herself? Or just irritated that I wasn't at her beck and call? I still didn't reply. Instead, I stretched my shoulders, got up from the bar stool, and walked out into the cool night air. I wasn't drunk, just relaxed, clear-headed. And I had an idea. If Rachel wanted to play games, I could play too. I took my time getting home, drove slower than usual, stopped at a gas station even though I still had half a tank. By the time I finally pulled into the driveway, another text was waiting for me. "Are you ignoring me?" I let my car idle for a moment, headlights illuminating the front of the house. Then finally I responded. "No, just busy." Short, vague, and I knew it would eat at her. Almost immediately, the typing bubbles popped up on the screen. Then they disappeared. Then they came back. I smirked. She was thinking. Good. A full minute passed before her reply finally came through. "Busy with what?" There it was. The shift. For the first time in a long time, she was the one left wondering. I could have answered. Could have told her exactly where I'd been. Made sure she knew she wasn't the only one who could go out and live her life without a care. But I didn't. Instead, I turned off my phone, got out of the car and walked inside. Let her sit with the uncertainty for once. The house was dark when I stepped in, the only light coming from the faint glow of the street lamp outside. The house was still. Too still. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around me, feeling the weight of everything that had unfolded tonight. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. My phone sat face down beside me. No vibrations. No notifications. For the first time in years, Rachel was the one waiting on me. And I was going to let her. I took my time getting ready for bed, changed into a clean t-shirt, brushed my teeth, stretched out my shoulders. My body felt loose, relaxed. My mind? Sharper than it had been in months. For so long, Rachel had made me second-guess myself, had me doubting my own instincts. And now, she was the one questioning me. I climbed into bed and stared up at the ceiling. The spot next to me was empty, but for the first time in a long time, that emptiness didn't bother me. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. 2:40 a.m. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It took me a second to process. The room was dark, the glow of the screen casting long, thin shadows across the walls. I blinked, reached for the phone, squinted at the name on the screen. Rachel. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. I exhaled slowly, setting the phone back down. A few seconds later, another buzz. This time, a text. "Are you awake?" I stared at the words for a moment before locking the screen. Not yet. 3:03 a.m. Another buzz. I sighed, rolling onto my side, checking the message. "I just got home. Can we talk?" My eyes drifted toward the bedroom door. Sure enough, I heard it. The soft creak of the front door shutting, the faint click of her heels against the hardwood floor. She was home, and she was nervous. I smirked to myself. Good. I didn't rush. I stretched, sat up, and finally, after a long pause, I typed out a single word. "Busy." The same response I'd sent earlier. Short, simple, and just enough to get under her skin. I waited. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then came back again. Finally, busy with what? I could picture her standing in the kitchen, phone in hand, brows furrowed. She had expected me to be home, expected me to be asleep, waiting for her. But I wasn't. I set my phone down, leaned back against the pillows and closed my eyes. She could wander around that house all night for all I cared. Let her sit in the silence for once. Morning. I stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, when she finally worked up the courage to say what was on her mind. "I just don't understand why you're acting like this." That made me laugh. I set my mug down, crossed my arms and met her gaze. "Like what?" She gestured vaguely, frustration flickering in her eyes. "Like you don't care." I leaned forward, resting my hands on the counter. "Should I?" Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. And in that moment I saw it, the shift. She wasn't in control anymore. For the first time, she didn't have the upper hand. For years, Rachel had steered this ship. I had been the patient one, the understanding one, the one who always tried to fix things. even when it felt like I was the only one trying. But last night had changed something. And now she was the one feeling that uneasy, gnawing uncertainty. I let the silence stretch between us, sipping my coffee like I had all the time in the world. I wasn't going to break first. I wasn't going to chase her for an explanation she wasn't ready to give. Let her sit in it. Finally, she spoke. I don't know why you're acting like this. I feigned ignorance. Like what? She sighed, rubbing her temple. Like you don't care. Like none of this matters to you. A quiet chuckle escaped me. That's funny, coming from you. Her eyes snapped up. What's that supposed to mean? I tilted my head, studying her. Rachel, you walked out of this house last night without a second thought. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted to go, and you didn't care how I felt about it. I paused, letting my words settle. So why does it bother you so much that I went out too? Her mouth opened, then closed again. No answer. I could see it. The gears turning, her searching for the right words, the right angle, something that would put her back in control. But there wasn't one. For the first time, she was at a loss. She crossed her arms, leaned against the counter. You're twisting this? She finally muttered. I laughed. Loud this time. I'm twisting it? Rachel, you made a choice. Now you have to live with it. She exhaled sharply, ran a hand through her hair. You're impossible. I shrugged. Maybe. A pause. Or maybe I just finally woke up. Silence again. Heavy. Unshakable. Rachel tapped her fingers against the counter, clearly irritated. I could see the wheels turning, the way she was trying to flip the narrative. But it wasn't working this time. Not anymore. She turned back to me, her expression unreadable. I didn't do anything wrong. I smirked. Did I say you did? Her eyes narrowed. You're trying to make me feel guilty. I took another sip of coffee, unfazed. If you feel guilty, that's on you. She huffed, pushing off the counter and storming toward the living room. A moment later, I heard her sink onto the couch, followed by a long, heavy exhale. Good. Let her sit with it. I wasn't chasing her anymore. She was chasing me, and it was about damn time. Rachel sat there, arms crossed, staring out the window like she was waiting for some kind of revelation. But there was nothing left to say, nothing left to fight about. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and leaned against the sink, watching her from across the room. The woman who used to be my best friend, my partner, my person, now just a stranger I didn't recognize anymore. She finally turned her head toward me, her expression softer now, hesitant. Daniel, she started, voice quieter this time. I raised a brow. Yeah. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something real, something that mattered. But nothing came out. And that's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was just afraid. Afraid of losing her safety net. Afraid of losing me. But she already had. I grabbed my keys off the counter and headed for the door. She sat up straighter, brows furrowing. Where are you going? I smirked, shaking my head. Don't worry about it. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by her choices. I wasn't stuck waiting for her to decide if I was enough. I was enough. I just hadn't been with the right person. As I stepped outside, the cool morning air filled my lungs, crisp and refreshing. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew one thing. I was walking towards something better, and this time I wasn't looking back. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.